Hello and welcome back. Today we are in a new setting because I am filming from my family room. We have never filmed in this little corner of our home before, but I wanted to share a little story time with Corey time. And so that's what we're going to do. One of the questions I get asked a lot is about fabric design. Sometimes I will put out a call for questions for a Q&A, and that's one I get asked a lot. And I have never taken the time to really sit down and chat about that because I know it's going to take a little bit of time to go through. It's kind of a long, meandering sort of story. And so if you are sewing or working on laundry or whatever you might be doing right now and you just want something to listen to but not necessarily have to look at a screen, this is a good one for that because I am just going to be chatting. I'm not really going to be showing anything. I have one thing that I'm going to show you right here at the beginning of this video that is not fabric related at all, but I think it's so funny and I was thinking about it, so I'm just going to chat about it. But this little mini mug right here with these little sprouts, this just makes me laugh. Okay, so these are my daughter Eleni's. She's 15 and she started growing these little seeds in this little mini mug just a couple weeks ago. She is an avid reader, and as part of a book subscription club that she was in, she had these points accrued that allowed her to spend money to buy some whatnot from their website. So she decided she was going to cash in her points, purchase some trinkets, and as part of that, she got 20 little seeds in a packet and this little mini mug. And the packet wasn't labeled with what these little seedlings were, so she planted them in her little mug. She drilled holes in the bottom here of her mug so that she could get the water out. And it's been a couple weeks, and last week she said, I just really wonder what these seeds are. She's asked me over the course of the last couple weeks what they could be, and I didn't know. So she decided she was going to look on their website and see if she could figure out what they were. And sure enough, she figured out what they were. She came running over to me and she said, Mom, I am growing 20 spruce trees in my little mini mug. So we have, I don't know if all of them grew or not, but there's quite a few in there. Little trees, little spruce trees, happily growing in our little mug. And we laughed so hard when we found out that that's what those trees, that's what those seeds were, was trees. And she said, where am I going to plant 20 trees? We do have space that we can plant them, but it was a little unexpected that they were 20 trees and not 20 wildflowers. But anyhow, I was just thinking about that and I thought that was funny. So now you know the story of the 20 spruce trees that Eleni is growing in her mug. We are going to move on to fabric design now. I know that's probably more interesting to you than the 20 trees. And it's kind of a fun little story to think back on because designing fabric was not something that I set out to do. It wasn't something I aspired to do. It was something that just bit by bit, little by little, just came into happening. And it's neat to think back over it. So let's chat about that. Let me share this with you. I'm going to take us back to 2005, which is when my oldest daughter, Chloe, was born. And I went from working outside the home full-time to being a stay-at-home mom. And that was a little bit of a transition for me. If you have had to do that same transition, if you got to do that, you know exactly, it can be tricky. It was tricky for me, being around people all the time, working in an environment that I really enjoyed, to being at home with a newborn baby. And I quickly learned that I needed something creative to keep my hands busy. I've always been a fairly creative person and definitely come from a family of very creative people. And when she was about a year, I started making little clothing items for her. And that quickly led to people asking me to make some of these pieces for them. They would see her wearing something and then they would want me to make that same item for them. And it led into a business, pretty much a full-time business for about 3 years that I could do here from home. It allowed me to be creative and it kept me quite busy. If you've heard of my company, Little Miss Shabby, that was the name of my clothing business. And I ran it from when she was about a year to when she was about 3. And my second daughter, Eleni, was born in 2008. At that time, I shut down the clothing business. It was just getting to be quite a job, and I enjoyed designing the pieces initially, but then I didn't enjoy recreating those pieces over and over the same thing. I might make 20 or 30 of one specific item, and I liked creating the first one, but not replicating them over and over. So I shut that business down, but knew I still wanted to stay busy with something creative. And so I got back into quilt design, quilt making, and that was kind of the path that my creativeness took after my second daughter was born. And I really became interested in the design aspect of quilts and quilt blocks, and started designing quilt blocks, started designing quilts just bit by bit. It started out very simple as designing one quilt block for one project. I got involved in the online world of quilting. We all know that's a fun place to be. And I started participating in quilt-alongs and quilting bees, and that was kind of where the design work started. And over a few years, I just kept on designing. I started doing some work for Moda Bake Shop, which is a tutorial-based website that features Moda's pre-cuts. And so designers could do tutorials using the pre-cuts, and that's where I started designing whole quilts. So that happened. And then after I had done that for probably a year or two, I did a number of projects for Moda Bake Shop. I decided it would be fun to do a magazine project. I was gaining skills and confidence as the years went by. From 2008 to maybe 2011 or 12 or so is kind of the time span that we're looking at. And so over those years, I gained more confidence, gained skills, started working with different computer programs, understood quilt math and how fabrics work together, and so decided to try submitting a project for a magazine. I had my first project in American Patchwork and Quilting in 2012, and that quickly led to me submitting to a variety of other quilt magazines and having projects in those magazines as well. I kind of approached things thinking that if it was fun, why not give it a whirl? The worst that's going to happen is it's not going to work out, and then you'll just try something different. And so it was just a lot of fun. And after I did those magazines, I had a couple different fabric manufacturers reach out to me. They had seen my projects in those quilting magazines and were wondering if I would be interested in working with them to promote their various lines of fabric when they were showcased at quilt markets or to put into other magazines. So I worked with 2 different fabric companies for a few years, showcasing various fabric lines for them. So some of those projects went into magazines, some were like just those free one sheet patterns that are shown at Quilt Market or in catalogs to showcase those fabric lines. And that was another wonderful learning experience for me because I got to work with a lot of different fabric designers, a lot of different fabric lines. I really got to see what different people and different fabric companies put into their fabric lines, how many colors, how many prints, scales, you know, all of those things that make up fabric lines. And so I learned a lot during those years, and it was just a lot of fun. I would typically, those companies would send me the SKUs, just the digital images of a fabric line. And if it was something that I wanted to work with, then I could design a project. And then if the project worked for them, they would send me the fabrics, and I would have maybe a day or two to make the quilt top and send it back. And it was always so much fun to know I'm getting a box of fabric overnighted and I need to have this turned into a quilt top in like 24 hours, maybe 48 hours, and then back in the mail overnighted back to the fabric company. It's really a quick turnaround, but I just thought it was so much fun just to to have that anticipation and excitement of knowing that you have something and you just get to do it really quick and then send it back on its way. So I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed working with those companies, and it was a huge learning experience for me. So in 2014 is when my youngest daughter, Eleni, was heading off to kindergarten that fall. And so spring of 2014, I was chatting with some of my friends. And I think it's important to note that none of these friends are quilt makers. None of these friends are sewists. They really, that was not what drew us together. And I was talking to them, and several of them, I think all but one of those friends had our youngest starting school in the fall. And so we were all kind of bouncing ideas off of each other about what that was going to look for us. We were all stay-at-home moms, and it was going to look different having all of our kids in school. And so, you know, I was thinking about what I wanted to do, and I had always thought that I would just go back into work outside the home once the kids were in school. But when I thought about some of the different things, summer breaks, spring breaks, Christmas breaks, if the kids are sick, or, you know, different things like that, I still wanted to be able to be there for them. And so working outside the home full time, even part-time, could be a little bit trickier. And so, you know, that was just what was running through my head. Is this something that's going to work well for our family, or maybe should I be thinking about going in a different direction? And I had never really mulled over fabric design that much. I had considered quilt pattern design. At this point in time, by 2014, I had, you know, done the Moda Bake Shop. I had worked with the fabric companies. I had patterns in magazines. I had released my first book. I didn't touch on that, but I had a book release, Playful Petals, during that time frame. And so I had always thought, well, maybe, you know, quilt pattern design is something that I could really turn into a business if I wanted to. At that point, I did not have my Coriander Quilts pattern company. I was very much designing patterns and projects for other companies, but not necessarily, not at all, under my own pattern company. And so, you know, I was just thinking about those things. And I had a quilt shop owner who had said to me a few years back, well, why don't you try fabric design? And I said, I don't know anything about fabric design. I wouldn't know where to start. But that was kind of in the back of my head a little bit, because it ties in really well with what I'm already doing. And so I was talking about the pros and cons list of if I wanted to work outside the home, or maybe I'm contemplating fabric design. And my pros list was long. It allows me to stay at home. I can work from home. I can be here for the kids if they need me. The flexibility sounds great. The cons list was primarily, I have no idea how to do that. And so, I mean, that's one con, but that was a pretty big con. And one of my friends said, after hearing the pros, well, you should just try fabric design. And she said it so matter-of-factly without even giving it a second thought. And I thought, well, okay, maybe I should just try that. And so I went home after that dinner with those friends, and I decided to see what I could find out about fabric design. So as I said, this was 2014. There was not the amount of information available like there is now, but there still was a lot of great information about fabric design that you could find online, that you could read in books. And so I just set out to see what I could do about putting a collection together. Now, as I said, I had worked with fabric companies, worked with lots of different fabric lines from all kinds of fabric designers. So I worked with modern fabrics, traditional fabrics, more contemporary fabrics, big prints, little prints, all the things. So I knew very much what I would want to put into a fabric collection. And I knew also that I would want to work with Moda Fabrics. I had worked with a wide variety of fabric companies, and I always really enjoyed working with Moda. And I felt that the fabrics that I'm drawn to, the fabrics that I would want to create, would be a good fit for Moda. They aren't super modern, they're not super traditional, they're just kind of a nice balance in the middle. And I felt that Moda, I still feel that they have like such a nice range of types of genres in fabric, and I feel like my fabrics are a nice fit there. So when I started putting my collection together, I knew that they were the company that I wanted to work with. And so I started sketching. I started figuring out how to get my sketches from on a sketchbook into a computer, how to color, how to create repeating fabric designs, and started putting together a collection. I will tell you, if you want to try dabbling in fabric design, there is a program called Inkscape, I-N-K-S-C-A-P. I'll link to it in the description box below. That is a really nice starting point. It's a free program. You just download it onto your computer. There are tutorials. I even bought a book on Amazon that was an introduction to using Inkscape. So if you want to dabble and you don't mind, there's a learning curve, but you want to dabble, you don't mind learning, and you want to try your hand at fabric design, that is a nice resource to know is available. So my first collection, Prairie, which came out in 2015, was done entirely in Inkscape. So it's a versatile program and a nice starting point if you don't want to make a big investment in design software. So I put together my fabric collection, learning as I went, and submitted that collection to Moda in the summer of 2014. And they accepted the collection, said welcome aboard, and I've been designing with them ever since. That was an exciting email. I don't think I saved that email. I know I had it saved. Maybe I have it on my old computer. That was so exciting. Anyhow, and like I said, I have been designing with them since then. I don't know if I said that, but I have been. I release 2 or 3 lines every year, and it's just been a lot of fun. That is, I'm trying to think if I left anything out that I wanted to say. Oh, there's one thing I guess I could share yet. So at the first quilt market that I was at in 2015, where Prairie was shown, at that market, Sherry and Chelsea, myself, Beth of One Canoe 2, and also Betsy Chutchin, we were all showing our first fabric lines with Moda at that same market. And it was very interesting chatting with them to hear how different our approach to fabric design is. And that has been the one thing that I have learned, is that we all really come from a lot of different backgrounds. Some of us come from more of a quilting background. Some of us come from more of an art background or a graphic design background. And it's just been neat chatting to some of the different Moda designers just to hear how different our approach is. I know I get asked, what I'm sharing with you today, how did you get into fabric design? And I know that people are asking that because they're wondering how can they get into fabric design. But it's so different for every one of us. I would be hard pressed to say that there's any 2 of us that have come into it in the same way. And so, you know, I can share how things went for me, but that's not the same journey or the same path that somebody else took to get to the same spot. So just something to keep in mind if you are thinking about fabric design and you're like, and you think, well, I don't have that experience, I don't have that background, I can't do that. You can do what you can do to the best that you can do it. And that's really, you know, what you need to focus on is what am I good at? What can I bring to the table? What skills can I improve on my own? You know, those sorts of things. And don't compare yourself to someone else's journey or someone else's skills or you know, short sell yourself, because you are you are just exactly who you need to be to accomplish just exactly what you need to accomplish. So I don't know if any of that makes any sense, but I hope it does. I hope it's an encouragement. I always enjoy hearing how people get to where they are and kind of the path that they took, because it's all just so different for every one of us. If you have any questions about fabric design, you are welcome to leave it below. I'm not going to be able to answer everything, but I will do my best to answer what I can. And if you have any other questions, quilting related questions that you think might be fun to have me answer in a future Q&A video, feel free to leave those below too. And I think that sums up this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you again next time.